Howdy gamers, I'm going to be talking about not so much what runes to run on Trundle, but why to run the runes that are good on him and other options that you have inside of different rune trees. Also, I'm just going to be talking primarily about Trundle Jungle as he's not so viable in the other roles like he used to be in top and support. I'll mention them briefly near the end if you're interested in that, but it's mostly just going to be my thoughts on the runes for Trundle Jungle as that's his most viable role right now. So the two major keystones for him in the jungle is going to be Press the Attack and Conquer. Press the Attack giving you and your team more damage, and Conquer giving Trundle himself more damage. Other runes that are pretty fringe that aren't so useful on him would be something like Fleet of Footwork, would help you run targets down, but you don't need that as you already have a slow in your kit. Something like Predator could help you with your ganks, but falls off so quickly after about like even early game, like just into mid game, like 12 minutes, Predator is falling off. In most matchups, it has its place, but in those niche cases, I think they're pretty obvious, and I also think they're more useful at higher MMRs than it's worth mentioning. The Predator tree also isn't so bad. You get access to Cheap Shot. Both of these are going to act as your damage runes. And then Zombie Ward's not so useful. And then either Ingenious Hunter or Relentless Hunter is kind of whatever. And then no matter the secondary runes you run, it's all going to be giving you about the same effectiveness. But you lose out on a lot of DPS inside of a sustained fight, which is what Press the Attack and Conquer gives you in two different forms. Another keystone that would be kind of fringe, but maybe okay, would be something like Unsealed Spellbook. But I'll come back to that one as well. So starting off with the keystone that I would recommend is going to be Press the Attack. With Press the Attack, hitting an enemy champion with 3 consecutive basic attacks deals bonus damage based on your level, and then exposes the enemy, increasing all damage they take from all sources by a percentage based on your level as well. And that's for 6 seconds. The reason I think that Press the Attack is the best for Trundle Jungle is that you're basically a supportive jungler. You get a lot more agency in your own damage through Conqueror, but it's not really the huge strength of Trundle. The huge strength of Trundle is being able to add so much utility to your team by being this tank and providing the slow with your pillar. And Press the Attack is like a bonus for doing that, as you're going to single out a target, and then once you've exposed them with Press the Attack, you're increasing the damage that they take from all sources. So not only are you effectively CCing them, you can also be reducing their armor and magic resist with your ult. So you really single out a target and increase all the damage they're taking, not only from the ult, but also from Press the Attack. And then you also increase the likelihood that they take damage by slowing them with the pillar. So I think that's really where Press the Attack shines, because if you're playing Trundle to 1v1, yeah, you're going to be getting better values out of Conqueror almost every single time. But I think if you're playing Trundle to 2v2, 3v3, or 5v5, then Press the Attack is always going to be a more viable option. I'll give it to you that Conqueror is going to be, it's just going to feel better in a lot of scenarios in solo queue, as when there's less team play and it's just all about you right-clicking the other champion, yeah, Conqueror's probably going to be giving you better values at most stages, but the way that Trundle actually functions, I think, aligns way more with the supportive aspect of Press the Attack. Regardless of the keystone that you're running in either Press the Attack or Conquer, it's going to put you in the precision tree. And then you have a lot of good options here. You have Triumph, which is going to give you HP regen on kills and assist. Helps you just stay in a fight, or more so come back into it after one kill and assist, because you're trying to single out that one target and then probably be tanking most of the enemy team while you're doing so, or at least a little bit of them, and then you can kite away and then come back, and then if you have your W going as well, the Triumph heal is going to be increased a little bit too. For the third rune, you have okay options in Alacrity and Legend Tenacity. You want to be looking to run a Legend Tenacity whenever like the enemy has almost any CC. Champions like Zac, Nautilus, Thresh, Leona, etc. Legend Tenacity is going to be giving you way better value, as it's going to help you stick on the targets and then also get away from them in more in losing situations. With Legend Alacrity, it's a really nice luxury, as Trundle is pretty reliant on his attack speed, and you don't want to be building attack speed in the jungle. It becomes really expensive. So if the enemy has literally no CC, then go ahead and run Alacrity, as it's going to increase your clear speed and then help you a little bit in fights to get more damage off. For the fourth rune here, your best option is probably going to be Last Stand. You're choosing how you get a percentage damage increase from these 3 runes. Coup de Grace giving you more damage on champions who are lower health. Cut Down giving you more damage on champions with more max health than you, so the least viable option. And then Last Stand gives you 5 to 11% increased damage to champions while you are below 60% HP. And then the max damage gained at 30, which is a lot of what Trundle's looking to do. He's looking to spend his HP early in a fight to build up Pressy Attack or Conqueror, regardless of which one you're running, and then you're building up your damage against the enemy. Whenever you're in the fight too, once you're on top of them, or the entire enemy team, then that's when you're looking to deal damage too, and then that's where you've spent your HP to get in that position. So when you're there, you're simply dealing more damage with your auto attacks. Coup de Grace isn't terrible, as Trundle does have his damage uptime is effectively always because of his auto attacks, but Last Stand just synergizes way better with his kit, and it's not so much, it's not really up to Trundle to finish off a target or not. So Coup de Grace loses a lot of value in that sense. For the secondary runes, you have okay options. The best one's probably going to be Free Boots and Approach Velocity. Free Boots giving you boost for free, obviously, at 12 minutes, so you're saving 300 gold, which is pretty important in any tank matchup. The enemy jungler can get a gank off and be successful, and then you can still be even in gold with him effectively come mid-game because of Free Boots. With Approach Velocity, you gain 15% movement speed towards nearby allies that are movement impaired or enemy champions that you impair. This is going to help you stick on targets. It's really solid for Trundle, as you're always going to be leading with your pillar usually to single out a target, and then you're going to be able to stay on them with your chomp or just the slow from the pillar or the slow from Blue Smite if they were to get away. This also just opens up where running Blue Smite isn't as needed too, as you can stay on a target regardless because of the Q and because of the pillar. So then Red Smite becomes an actually good option, which most junglers can't pull off Red Smite, so Trundle has that advantage going for him too. To trade that off for something like Nimbus Cloak, and you could run Nimbus Cloak Celerity, you could run Nimbus Cloak Water Walking. Either of these, like Nimbus Cloak has the benefit, or has the advantage over Approach Velocity in the sense that it can be used defensively. Approach Velocity gives you movement speed towards enemies that you impair, so anytime you slow them. But that's movement speed towards them. It doesn't give you movement speed away from the enemy. So if a fight's like neutral or losing and you need to run away even briefly, Nimbus Cloak is going to help you do that better through smiting the enemy or flashing away. As with Nimbus Cloak, after you cast a summoner spell, you gain a bonus movement speed increase that lasts for a little bit. But with that, it doesn't have to be just whenever you're running the enemy down. It can be at any stage of the fight, but you do have the option to run away with it, as it gives you the bonus movement speed whenever, you're running away. The other options, or the other rune options, in the sorcery tree also just are kind of whatever. The bonus movement speed you're going to get from Celerity isn't really going to make or break things. You're going to get onto a target anyways as Trundle, and you're probably going to stay on them because of the pillar and because of the Q slow, and then you can also have Blue Smite on top of that. So if you're against a slippery target, like that's what Legend Tenacity is for. Celerity really isn't making or breaking anything. With Water Walking, it's also an okay rune for Trundle, but other champions that more so ganking junglers make better use out of Water Walking. Helps them whenever they're approaching for a gank, fighting for Scuttle Crab, or fighting around objectives. Trundle just doesn't need it, basically. You could also run something more aggressive in, let's say, Domination second with like Cheap Shot and Relentless Hunter. It's okay. Cheap Shot gives you true damage against enemies that you movement impair, so anytime you would Q or E, and Cheap Shot's also on a 4-second cooldown, so gives you an access to a little bit more damage. As it especially comes into play in more extended fights and against bruiser champions, as true damage is more effective against them. So in those matchups, maybe you could consider running that, because you wouldn't really need the movement speed from Approach Velocity to run down a bruiser champions like Darius, Irelia, etc. They're just going to be sitting on top of you and trading autos with you. So in that case, Cheap Shot could be giving you more damage. But in that case as well, you could also get some value out of something like Bone Plating and Revitalize. Even though Bone Plating is really low value in the jungle, if you're into just a lot of melee champions, and particularly bruisers, Bone Plating is going to give you a lot more effective HP to play with. And Revitalize has pretty good synergy with Trundle's kit, giving you more healing on your W. And then if you're running Conquer, more healing on that as well, but it's mostly just about the W. With back to Cheap Shot and Relentless Hunter, Cheap Shot, again, giving you access to a little bit more damage. It's nothing that crazy, and missing out on it, you barely feel it. It really is just a greedier option. With Relentless Hunter, you get out of combat movement speed. Trundle makes okay use of this. I think Domination is probably better if you're just like primarily smurfing, as you get this more movement speed. The out of combat movement speed is really just going to help you whenever you're going for ganks that shouldn't work anyways. So it's going to help you get into those lanes faster and then also deal more damage while you're there. But I think the consistency and then the overall general usefulness of free boots and then approach velocity for Trundle is always going to be the highest value. Saving 300 gold is really, really impactful for a tank jungler, and then the extra movement speed on to your allies and then to enemies is also generally just the most useful, as it's really important that you stay on a target when you're actually fighting, because if they're getting away, then your champion ceases to exist. For the shards, I think that attack speed, adaptive force, and armor is always going to be the go-to. Attack speed helping you clear the jungle faster and then deal more damage whenever you are on top of a target. The attack damage giving you more damage on your autos, and then the armor because you're playing in the jungle and you're going to be taking mostly physical damage. You might be thinking like, why not like armor scaling health since you're a tank, but Trundle deals enough damage that the adaptive force is pretty meaningful on him. So I think this is going to be the best rune setup for Trundle into most matchups. And I think it's the best because of the supportive utility it offers, a little bit of scaling that you get from it, a lot of, like, you get free tenacity, you get free boots, you get access to this extra movement speed that is going to give you a lot of utility, and then you gain some effective HP in Triumph, and then you also gain access to damage that you otherwise couldn't have, and that your team couldn't have with Press the Attack and Last Stand. So that's why I think it's the best. I think it works with how Trundle's kit wants to play out. So that's that for that. With Conqueror, I think that it's not a bad rune on Trundle, obviously. With Conqueror, your basic attacks are spells that deal damage to enemy champions, grant you 2 stacks of Conqueror, giving you bonus adaptive force based on your level, and then stacks up to 10 times. When it's fully stacked, you heal for 15% of damage that you deal to champions. With Trundle, if you're playing it as like a 1v1, of course, Conqueror is going to be giving you, right-clicking another champion is going to be giving you more stats as Trundle. But, like, where is a situation in which you're 1v1ing like the enemy jungler or the enemy laner as Trundle jungle? It becomes really slim. And then when those cases are going to happen, you're going to be getting more value out of Conqueror. You're going to get more value out of Conqueror too whenever you're responding to fights or like acting like a janitor jungler. And there are champions that just do that better, especially in the jungle. Because with Trundle too, you have to build up Conqueror. So it's going to be an auto attack, a Q, an auto attack, and then another auto attack, and then Conqueror's proc. And then you're healing for 15% of the damage that you deal to champions, but you're only dealing damage to champions with your auto attack and with your Q. Potentially with your ult, but mostly just with those two. And with that, like, other champions just have AoE abilities, and that gives them way better value out of Conqueror. Most bruisers that run this, champions like Darius, if they're hitting multiple enemies, then you're just inevitably getting more value out of the 15% of damage against champions healing as you're damaging more champions. With Trundle, though, you do have the bonus healing from your W. That works well with Conqueror. And yeah, so you trade off a lot of supportive utility in Press the Attack, and Press the Attack's damage is fine on its own. For like more agency, solo for Trundle with Conqueror, and I don't think that that's really an equivalent exchange, as you might as well be playing another jungler that does that better. Any sort of the fighting junglers, just Trundle functions as a tank, and he's better off playing with his team, and then you achieve more damage with like through that anyways. Because like let's say you're in a 1v1 with a Maokai, yes, you can ult them and then auto attack them and Q them and let go of your mouse and keyboard and press Q sometimes. Conqueror's going to help you a lot more in those situations. But whenever, let's say, you're ulting a Nautilus support who has used Gargoyles and Aftershock, then you get a lot of stats for free, and then you can proc press the attack on either him or any of the enemy frontline, then that's going to be more impactful. With press the attack too, the way that fights are going to play out with Trundle is like you're going to act as the front line and you're going to isolate the enemy front line, because with a pillar you make it harder for the enemy to move back and you make it harder for the enemy carries to move forward because of that slow. So you isolate the target, and then when you expose them with press the attack, it becomes way more meaningful because they're taking more damage from all sources, as it just doesn't have to be about just Trundle's damage. So yes, Conqueror gives you more damage solo, but since it's a 5v5 game mode, I think press the attack is always going to be better. If you were to run Conqueror, the same page I think would be probably your best. If you're going to run Conqueror, actually I suppose that, now that I think about it, Bone Plating Revitalize has to be better, because if you're only playing for 1v1s, Bone Plating is giving you more effective HP without items, and then Revitalize is giving you more healing. So that's going to be healing off your auto attacks and then your Conqueror. So yeah, so that's that. With Predator, again, I think it's an okay option whenever lanes can be ganked. Champions that, especially like top lane champions that just don't have gap closers and whatnot, Predator can really ruin them because you get to create ganks that otherwise can't happen. It's a really risky trade-off that you take whenever you run Predator on Trundle, though, as let's say if you're running Predator, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and Ingenious Hunter, and then what would you even run secondary? If you were to run something like Last Stand Triumph, the whole functionality of it really shifts, as you're not really looking to survive. You're really looking to like get this initial attack off on enemies and whatnot. You're really just playing for ganks. It's not even for team fights and whatnot. So in that case, I think you should shift the secondary runes to, I suppose it would be Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking, as Nimbus Cloak is going to help you stay on a target once you get onto them with your blue smite or your red smite. And then with Water Walking, it's going to help you get more movement speed to approach for ganks. This is a more cheese setup for Trundle, but again, the times in which it will work is whenever, usually that side lanes are immobile, so you could play against like a Darius. This would be okay, as you could gank him easier. You could play against a bot lane like Varus Zyra or something. Predator is going to help you flank them if they're pushed up or whatnot. And Predator has the advantage where whenever you're using it, it's going to make it so that you can just run over wards and then still get the gank off, and that's really the value for it. So Trundle has that option. And then with something like Unsealed Spellbook, Unsealed Spellbook giving you access to more summoner spells. Since you're playing as a tank, especially one that has really cheap itemization, Unsealed Spellbook can be okay. But with Trundle, the way that his kit functions with the auto attacks and then with the Q and then with his ult, he has access to a lot of damage. So I do feel like you're trading off a lot because you're missing out on Press the Attack and Last Stand whenever you're running Unsealed Spellbook. And you're trading that off for like an Exhaust in a team fight, a Ghost, a Heal, a Cleanse, a Barrier, an Ignite, etc. Other champions like Orange Jungle just do that better than Trundle. And I don't know a case in which you would be picking Trundle and then this would be your best bet, as if you're playing into other tanks, then Press the Attack is just better. And if you're playing into like bruiser champions and whatnot, it's going to be about the same thing. The defensive utility from Unsealed Spellbook just doesn't go that far for Trundle. And then you'd end up with a page like this, I suppose. And then any of the secondary runes become really awkward at this point. So, yeah. That's my thoughts on Trundle runes. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I try to answer all of them. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. You can also subscribe. This channel is just League of Legends content. And yeah, twitch.tv/SorryNelson, links in the description. Trundle support was actually really, really cool back in like what was it, season 5 or something. I really enjoyed playing it with Face of the Mountain. It was really, really cool. Top Trundle's a scam though.